Hello and welcome back to Tricolor Gaming with me, Fletcher. And welcome to the second retrospective review of the Jurassic World films, this time focused on Fallen Kingdom. And if you haven't seen our first video, this is me and my friend Nerdguy Productions. Say hello.
Hello.
And Nerdguy Productions is a big film buff. He went to university to study it. And we thought it would be a fun idea to look over the Jurassic World movies from my Jurassic Park perspective and his film degree perspective. So we did the first movie, the first Jurassic World. There'll be a link in the corner if you haven't already seen that video. It is quite a long one, so I do apologize. I have a feeling this video might be just as long because I think we are going to have a lot to say about this one, don't we?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think the best place to start is let's sum up what did we think about the first film, and you can start with that if you like.
The first one, again, I still think it's a pretty alright movie. It has some glaring flaws, especially on rewatches, but overall a pretty serviceable story. Again, it has a few slightly unforgivable moments or plot lines, but for the most part, it was an alright movie.
Yeah, I think for the most part we agree that it was an okay return to the franchise, and it wasn't offensive, but it was just kind of okay, acceptable, average, run-of-the-mill sort of thing.
Yeah, not too offensive, not too anything. It was just an alright little action movie.
Yeah. And our opinions of this movie are considerably more pronounced.
Yeah.
So let's start with the plot then. So I actually think the opening to this particular movie is quite strong. The opening submarine scene going through the mosasaur tank, and it's all very dark and atmospheric, and you have the storm over the wreck of the island, and I actually think the opening is really good.
In a moment of truly out of character, I disagree. I take a slightly more cynical approach to the opening scene.
That's total opposite to our usual roles. You're supposed to be the optimistic one. I'm the cynical one.
To me, the opening scene showed a lot of promise because the initial opening moments of the scene are very tense. You can tell there's like a building action towards something that's going to go wrong. But as soon as things actually go wrong, to me, it just kind of falls flat. It just feels very standard. It loses what tension it was building almost immediately, and it just, I don't know, didn't really work for me. I've seen the T-Rex chase after a person running away from it so many times at this point, even parodied in other movies and things now, that it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. And I saw the mosasaur jump out of the water and eat something in the last movie twice. So I again feel like there's nothing really new to this scene. It's just the dinosaurs eat some people. It just didn't really work for me as well as I would have wanted it to.
No, and I think it's our first example of an incredibly, not coincidental, but contrived way of getting the mosasaur to escape for the wonderful shot that they had to have in the trailer from the end of the film. Mm-hmm. We have a large enclosure for a dangerous animal connected literally to the open ocean by a single gate, which doesn't shut if the tablet you've got the gate control on gets broken or turns off at all. It just stays open, and there's only one gate. It's the most unsafe design for a natural wild animal.
It also sort of doesn't matter because the mosasaur gets out, and then you don't see the mosasaur until the very end of the movie trying to eat a surfer.
Yeah.
So
they make such a big deal of its escape, and it doesn't really matter for the rest of the film.
Yeah, you would think that would be the immediate plot point following that scene. Like, okay, a giant mosasaur has just escaped. We should do something about that. But they completely ignore it for the entire movie. They do not talk about it again.
In fact, it gets ignored as well throughout Dominion. Like, you've got a massive, oversized dangerous animal loose, and you're not going to do a damn thing about it at all. And then we have the news story, or the news report, that sets up the whole point of the first third of the movie, which is,
Lazy.
Mount we'll talk about that in a sec, but basically, to sum up the news report, Mount Sibo, which is the volcano on Isla Nublar, because the island is volcanic and that's how they got all their power, from geothermal energy. But Mount Sibo is becoming more active. It's going to threaten the dinosaurs still living on Isla Nublar, and there's a big hoo-ha in the press and the media about whether the dinosaurs deserve to be protected and saved, or whether they should just be left to die when Mount Sibo erupts. And that is the whole premise of the first third of the movie, essentially, right there.
There are things brought up in this news montage that are actually kind of interesting. Again, I like that question posed. Do the dinosaurs deserve to live or not? It is worthy of a debate, an interesting conversation to be had. I just despise exposition through news footage, or a news anchor just telling the audience, here's what you need to know, and here's the main questions of this movie. It's one of the laziest screenwriting tactics out there. It is one of the first things taught in some of my screenwriting classes not to do. Like, if you can avoid it, do not explain the world or the state of things through a bunch of news footage. It's boring and it has nothing to do with your characters.
It should also be noted that as interesting as the questions are, this is also the first case of the film rehashing something from a previous movie, because this is essentially what the questions were asked in the second Jurassic Park film. Whether the dinosaurs had the right to exist, because you have the main bad character of that movie. One of his most memorable lines is, "They don't have any rights. We made them. They're our products. We own them." And that was the whole.
Why did they need to be relocated in that movie? I haven't seen the second one in so long.
They weren't. So they just went to Isla Sorna to capture them, and we will be discussing Isla Sorna more in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, basically the second movie, the whole premise is, do the dinosaurs have the right to just be left alone, or are they owned? So this film is kind of a rehash of that. And then immediately following the news report, we have this one of Jeff Goldblum's two very short cameos for this film, and I am going to call them cameos because the trailer made such a big deal, and they made such a big deal in the hype and the hype and marketing on the run up to this movie about him being back in the franchise, and then he was in it for two short scenes. But it's it's an interesting courtroom scene where basically Ian Malcolm turns around and says the dinosaurs should be left to die. And again, I thought that the film was going to, do more with this whole question of the dinosaurs' rights to exist and the courtroom drama and everything. But of course, it kind of, that's it. once that's done, it's over and done with. And we swiftly move on to the reintroduction of Claire Dearing, repositioned from businesswoman to, or what would you say, environmental activist?
Yeah. She clearly has a firm hand in trying to convince other politicians to fund certain ventures and everything. So yeah, an environmental activist, I would say. Which I think is a fairly natural progression from where you leave her at the end of the first Jurassic World. The whole point of that movie for her character was to learn that, the dinosaurs and people around her are, alive. They are not just numbers and figures and things for her to abstract away from herself. So now that she's realized that, she's trying to do something to help the creatures that she's put into a really shitty spot right now.
Yeah, and then we're introduced to the other two sort of supporting characters here, being Dino Vet Lady and Screaming Guy. I'm just going to...
Yeah, they just don't... See, I don't find the characters insufferable like I have seen many do. I just don't really see the point of their characters. Like, once the movie's all said and done, if you did remove their roles from the film entirely, wouldn't really change all that much. You could easily stand in other characters for the things that they do in key scenarios. So even though there's a handful of comedic moments that did kind of land for me, there were so many others that didn't. It makes me wonder why they're there. They don't seem to have enough of a presence to really warrant it.
And then immediately after, we head to Lockwood Manor, which is where most of the movie is going to take place after the event on Isla Nublar go down. And we're introduced to this idea of this other fellow, Benjamin Lockwood, who we'll discuss his character, I think, in the character section, but broadly he's a replacement for John Hammond, and it's being heavily inserted into the sort of the lore and the canon of the Jurassic Park franchise. Instead
of making dinosaurs, though, he made warp drive.
Yes, he did, and that's a reference to the actor's previous role in a Star Trek film, where I actually have to say he was far better as Zephram Cochrane in that Star Trek movie than he was
100%.
as a discount John Hammond. But anyway.
He had a lot of personality in that role. He was very much a fun, zany guy. Here he's just John Hammond 2.0, pretty much.
And that much is even more obvious with the mansion itself. There's a big portrait of flipping John Hammond in the entry hall to this mansion.
I mean, it does make sense, though. If it's supposedly his, lifelong work partner, it would sort of make sense for him to have a nice painting of his buddy. Or perhaps more. Is that what they were hinting at here? I mean, hey, there could be they could always make a spin-off of the two of them, back in their 40s, just being science lovers or something.
Don't ship it. And we're introduced to the plan through Mr. Benjamin Lockwood that they are going to go to Isla Nublar, they are going to save some of the dinosaurs, and then they're going to transport them to another island called Sanctuary, where they're going to be allowed to live out the rest of their natural lives, is essentially the point. This movie completely forgets that there is already another island for this. It's called Isla Sorna. It's where we were for The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3. It's where the dinosaurs were being left to live out their natural lives. It's where Simon Masrani, for the first Jurassic World movie, went and got most of the dinosaur stock for the park. So why... This is a question that sits with me about Fallen Kingdom, is that they totally ignore the fact that the other Jurassic Park films have been made and exist. They ignore that Isla Sorna exists, where there are probably already wild dinosaurs, and they invent a completely new island that we never go to and we never see in the first fucking place, apart from this wonderful model.
And the first time I saw this, this wasn't a problem for me, because again, I forgot about the second and third movies almost entirely, and did not know that there was an island, right next door that could have easily been used for this situation. On a second watch through with the knowledge, though, it does stand out as at least a situation, like they could have at least taken a moment to explain why they can't do that. Like, I don't know, a tsunami wiped out a good portion of that island. Flimsy excuse, but again, they have a room full of writers that are paid a lot more than me. I'm sure they could come up with something. And just address it, that it is something that was considered, not just forgotten. I have an excuse. I'm just a casual audience goer. They're the writers of the movies. They should definitely know what happened in the previous ones.
And I mean, in fact, there's not even just Isla Sorna there. I mean, there's a wonderful picture in the Lost World movie of the island chain where Isla Nublar is. It's called Las Cinco Muertes, the 5 deaths. It's an island chain. There are 5 islands, and It's a real island chain, and Isla Nublar is imaginarily placed in the middle, essentially. We don't even know where this apparent sanctuary island even was going to be. It's definitely not in the Five Deaths chain. So even the whole idea, you're going to go to this island chain where there are lots of islands you could put the animals that don't have volcanoes. You're going to take them, kidnap them, put them on boats, and move them to a totally different island, probably hundreds of thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't make very much sense to me as a plot line.
But they need to sell them on the black market, so...
And talking of slimy characters, we have our bad guy for this movie introduced, whose name escapes me.
Hold
Did
on.
you put his name down?
No.
There we go, folks. That's how important and effective we thought this bad guy was. We didn't even name him. I think it's Eli Mills.
To be fair, he is not introduced as the bad guy. It's fairly obvious.
It's fairly obvious that he is.
He's going to be, but I mean, again, to a super casual audience goer who's not really paying attention that closely, you might miss it. What is his name? I know he's not one of the Lockwoods. I can't remember.
His name is Eli Mills.
Oh, okay.
And
It's too bad. I do like the name Eli.
It is kind of obvious that he's a slimy character just by the way that he goes after the fact that they want Blue, the raptor. And that's kind of the only reason that Claire Dearing is being wrapped up in this, and Owen Grady for that matter, this film. That they just want to get Blue, and they can't get Blue because they can't find her. So to find her, they need to go to the island and turn on the tracking devices again, which for some reason they can't use the tracking devices with some other equipment. You can only track the dinosaurs with tracking equipment on Isla Nublar. And to do that, they need specifically the handprint identification of someone who worked at the island, aka Claire Dearing.
Yeah, it's a lot of contrivances to make sure that our main characters are present during, the big action. Which I can sort of forgive. It's not the greatest writing, and it is a lot of contrivances, but in order to kind of get us moving along, it's not like the most sinful thing the movie can do. It's just... Again, with her being an environmental activist, I feel like you have an easy way to do a storyline where the government itself kind of places her as a part of the team to go help these dinosaurs. But instead, they really want to focus on the Blue and then, later hybrid storyline and everything, which I don't care for.
And then we have this really cringy, cheesy...
building his own house.
kind of repeat scene where Claire Dearing goes off to find Owen Grady, who again is doing something very manly. In the last film, he was doing something with his bike. This film, he's building a house.
What kind of man you need? A man who builds his own house with his own two hands. That's a man.
Incidentally, he must never actually live in the house that he builds, because in Dominion they're somewhere completely different, in a log cabin in the middle of nowhere. So it's not even...
He built a different one after
He built
that.
a different house after that. And maybe he takes the house apart and moves it and builds it again in Dominion.
Maybe he built it so solidly they could just sort of pick it up and take it somewhere else.
Using one of those oversized Quetzalcoatlus.
Yeah, I didn't find the scene to be... It is overly cheesy, but again, it wasn't so insufferable I couldn't stand it. But at the same time,
It is it's a reset of their character.
Yeah, I have zero idea why they chose to reset the relationship between these two, considering keeping them together would make a later story point make a lot more sense and have a sort of natural progression, which again we'll get to later on. The reset, it just feels like they did it for the sake of the will they won't they tension. With why must we have that trope in every action movie with the hot power couple in it. It's a tired trope that doesn't do anything but disservice this movie in particular, so I find it to be a very odd choice. Because they did a good job carrying over with Claire's character. I was like, oh look, she ended at this point and pretty much picked up from that point and continued on. And then when it comes to the two of them, they just reset. And I don't get it.
And in fact, it's not even like Owen Grady takes that much convincing. I mean, he says that he doesn't want anything to do with this mission to go and save Blue and everything else. And then he turns up anyway. So, not only is this scene pointless, but Owen Grady is a fucking liar.
I know they have the scene in the bar where they, have their heart to heart, where she's like, come on, it's like you rate. Oh, that's right. He watches the footage of the baby raptors and Blue, and that's what convinces him, like, okay, I have to go save them. Which I will just lead into saying I despise the raptor stuff they've done in Jurassic World movies.
We'll discuss the raptors in the dinosaur section a bit later on. But yes, I do agree. Despise. And then we travel to Isla Nublar. So Claire Dearing, Owen Grady, Screamy Guy, or Screaming Administrator, and Paleo Vet Woman, who's just there to be passive aggressive to everybody, goes to Isla Nublar.
She also has her moment with the, I don't know my dinosaurs, I'm sorry.
Oh, the Brachy.
Yeah, the Brachiosaur. She has that little moment of like, oh wow, it's wonderful.
She does have the little oh wow, and then she goes back to being
yes.
And we're introduced obviously to the mercenary team and the Tooth Collector, who's already been here on the island, and they've already captured a lot of dinosaurs again. So it is very clear again that the whole reason for Claire Dearing being involved is to get Blue. That's the reason they're here.
They do not pick up on this though.
No, but Owen Grady, who is apparently military trained, does not pick up on this shady character. And they travel to the ruined park. I suppose it's interesting to see, the abandoned park, because that was something that we never got with Jurassic Park itself. Once Jurassic Park, the movie, was done, we never returned to the park. And even in Jurassic World 1, we only ever saw the visitor center. So with this film, we see a lot more of the wreckage of the park. And yeah, we have that nice moment of the Brachiosaurus walking through, and again, it's another nostalgia reference to Jurassic Park, because Brachiosaurus is the first dinosaur we saw in that, and we have the nice look at this wonderful dinosaur moment.
Which, I mean, again, it worked enough for me, that scene. Like, it didn't feel too intense with, like, nostalgia bait. It just felt like a fairly nice moment with the characters kind of being in awe of it. I honestly wish they would have more moments like that in these movies, where there are characters just sort of in awe of the, force of nature, the fact that these animals are alive again. It's always been an aspect of the Jurassic movies. I feel like they don't play up enough. They only really did in the first one. I'm like, again, I know it's sort of been a while since dinosaurs have been around, but it's a fucking dinosaur. Is that not incredible? I don't know. I just feel like they should have more moments like that.
I kind of want that on a t-shirt now. Just like a picture of the Jurassic Park logo, and just, it's a fucking dinosaur written underneath. Comment in chat if you would, or comment in the down below if you'd want a t-shirt with that on as well. The Screaming Administrator hacks into the security system quite fast for someone who didn't work at the park. They get the tracking system online.
Yes, but he's a hacker. This is Hollywood hacking. He even says the line, "I'm in," which did make me cringe pretty hard. I hate when they have hackers in movies say, "I'm in."
And they go off, they activate the system, and they find Blue, and Owen Grady goes off to go do his hiccup toothless hand thing to the raptor, and we have a nice, again, little nostalgia reference of the original. I believe the original tour Jeep that Blue is stood on in this particular scene is the one that Alan Grant had to rescue Tim from, which was in the tree and then fell out of the tree and fell on them. I believe it's supposed to be the same
nice
thing, which means this area of the park is the old T-Rex paddock then in that case.
I did kind of like some of the raptor scene here, just for how I guess dark it gets for a brief moment. Just particularly the shot of Blue's like claw through the guy's face, I thought was particularly gruesome in that moment. Even though, again, it's not gory, but I was like, oh my.
Yes, shit very quickly goes down. The bad guys quickly reveal this is all a setup. They tranquilize Owen Grady. Vet woman has to threaten to shoot herself, or has to threaten them to hurt her, but because Blue has been shot, because quite rightly she was killing the hell out of some guy, that woman uses the fact that Blue is going to die without her to make sure she is kept alive. Is a contrivance. And poor old Owen Grady is she could have just shot the guy right there.
I just didn't know what she was doing when she pointed the gun at them. She's like, well, I mean, my biggest problem with that is she picks up the gun and points it at him. I'm like, you are literally surrounded by like 12 people with rifles all pointed at you. What exactly is your plan right here? And then that's when she's like, well, you need me or Blue's gonna die. And I was like, okay, I guess.
Because this mercenary team wouldn't have, anyone who could probably stitch up a dinosaur on board just in case. I kind of feel like that's something they would probably have.
I mean, they make it a point to say how much they don't care about the well-being of the dinosaurs, so I guess they don't have vets for, like, any circumstances, which I agree sort of doesn't make sense. Like, if you're gonna sell these animals to certain buyers, you would at least have to have some sort of in-house vet to make sure you can get them on the auction block, essentially.
Chris Pratt is left so that he can do some really stupid humor a little bit later. Coincidentally, all shit breaks loose and the volcano erupts and everyone has to get the hell out of Dodge. So we have a few different bits about this whole section of the film, which we both absolutely despised, didn't we?
Yeah, I have a lot of reasons. I am very disappointed with this whole sequence. For one, I wasn't heavily involved in the marketing of this movie. I only saw the teaser trailer when it dropped. And honestly, when I saw in the trailer that the volcano was heavily featured as this big climactic moment and everything, it made me check out. I was like, I just feel like it's a little too silly. I don't really want to watch the movie. Obviously, I did much later on, but because of that, I didn't follow the marketing plan or anything. But I did see that one trailer, which again focused on this volcanic eruption as being this huge climactic moment. But so many moments during this are just ruined by these weird comedic moments. Like, I'll admit there are even a few moments that if it wasn't in this context, it would make me laugh. It's just, this is clearly a moment in the movie where it would really benefit from letting it be tense and serious. Like, this is a huge thing happening right now. The volcano is erupting all around you. You are trying to both survive that, the stampeding dinosaurs. Like, there's plenty at stake here, and yet they play it for comedy over and over and over again, starting with Owen Brady's escape from the lava.
Yes,
which
let's
again,
start with that one.
like, that, again, it could be such a tense scene that I think would be very good. Him slowly regaining feeling in his body and just barely inching away out of the flow of this lava coming towards him, like that. in and of itself is a good tense moment that they play up for laughs. He like goofily, flops around and over a log and stuff, and it's just
after a Sinoceratops wakes him up with a drool.
Yeah, it's just silly. It's just too silly for no reason. It does not belong in this moment of the movie, I don't think.
And then we also have the Claire and Screaming Guy who is trapped inside the little bunker area, and lava is pouring in, and a baryonyx comes through the pipework to scare them.
Cool visuals, I'll admit. Nice visuals.
Cool visuals, nice visuals. Baryonyx takes a direct hit from lava on the head, it would be dead.
Yeah.
Doesn't die, survives. But we just again have this played for comedic effect bit of like them trying to escape, and Screaming Guy just
screams.
Basically screaming at every possible opportunity. They do eventually escape though from the baryonyx, and Owen Grady and them meet up to avoid this stampede of dinosaurs coming down the hill.
Which, again, makes sense. All the animals stampeding away from the erupting volcano, you're going to be running along with them. There's potential for a good scene right here, which they kind of, I wouldn't say kill, but they do severely disappoint with the fact that, is it a Carnosaurus that comes over to attack them?
The Carnotaurus. Yeah.
Carnotaurus, yes. For some reason, he's pissed and wants a meal while a volcano is erupting directly next to them. And I'm pretty sure survival would surpass any instinctual need of any of these predators at the current moment. But again, we have to have this weird action moment of some dino on dino action while having the heroes, survive it right next to the whole thing.
And we have that terrible trailer shot of the T-Rex roaring as the volcano properly goes off behind it, which again I suppose is cool if you only want your movie to appeal to people that just point and go ha ha dinosaur. But
I mean, like I said, it's a good visual, the roaring T-Rex and the exploding volcano. It's just very over the top. It's a lot.
Claire and Franklin get trapped inside a gyro ball, and Owen has to escape on foot. Let's just take some time out to discuss the actual volcano and how it's used. As we're both relatively good with our volcano knowledge, we love a good volcano film. We're both fans of Dante's Peak, and if you haven't seen it, I do suggest you go and watch it, because Dante's Peak is a great film.
Not as good of a movie, but Volcano, Tommy Lee Jones, also an enjoyable one.
This volcanic eruption is this end eruption. It's a pyroclastic explosion. Now, a pyroclastic flow is basically death. It's a death avalanche.
It is the end-all, be-all. It's the worst-case scenario of a volcanic eruption, essentially. If you see it coming towards you, you're done. There is pretty much no chance of escaping it. And again, if you are caught in that volcanic cloud of ash and gas and heat, it will kill you rather quickly.
Yes, so according to Wikipedia, just to do this as quickly, a pyroclastic flow moves along at around 100 kilometers an hour, but can reach up to speeds of 700 kilometers an hour. And
It depends on the pressure of the explosion, which this one looked pretty damn powerful.
Reaches temperatures of 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,000 degrees Celsius if you're in Britain. And of course as well, it's an avalanche of boiling hot gases and toxic gases from the volcano, and ash and rock from the volcano.
And there's particulate that is ripping things apart in this cloud. It is quite literally a cloud of death. There is not a single thing on the planet that will do well in it. If you're inside a tank, maybe. I don't even know if that would help you considering the pressures and gases involved, but maybe that would help you from the concussive forces and like immediate heat problem. But again, there's very little you can do to survive that scenario.
If you get caught in a pyroclastic flow, you die. There's no if or but about it. You're dead. But
yeah, so seeing Owen be consumed in this cloud,
and then running, still escaping it, fine, without any problems whatsoever.
Outrunning it in the first place was really pushing it. He was outrunning it for far, far longer than it would be possible. But again, considering it's a movie, and you always need to have, your good chase scene of this ominous thing looming behind you as you run just barely ahead of it, I could sort of accept that. But again, it's the fact that he is entirely consumed in this cloud and still survives, not even injured. They don't even attempt to be like, oh, he's severely burned or
It's not a mark
he's
on
really
him.
screwed up. He's totally fine. He doesn't even look dirty. So, I take a lot of issue with that. That's a hard pill to swallow for me, and I realize this might be
It might be a
partially
bit nitpicky,
because
but
yes, I mean, we're both people who actually studied and looked into how volcanoes, earthquakes, and natural disasters and things worked. But it's a huge logic leap. It's a huge problem to just overlook that. Again, I feel the writers should have not made the mistake of doing.
And the whole thing just comes across as a bit of a pointless action scene for me, and it still carries on. They end up in the water, their gyrosphere is filling up with water, and in an example of, again, really terrible design, the gyrospheres...
I like the gyrospheres.
But the gyrospheres have no emergency release on the inside of the gyrosphere vehicle, so they can't escape without Chris Pratt helping them from the outside.
Yeah.
While all around dinosaurs are falling into the water and drowning, they get washed up on a completely pristine part of the island that's not been touched by ash or any of the eruption whatsoever. And they basically see the captured dinosaurs being put on board a boat, and they again have a more continuation of the pointless action sequence of eruptors from the volcano crashing down around them, and they have to grab a jeep truck thing and they have to drive off the end of this pier to get to the boat in time before again the rest of the eruption catches up to them. And we have the attempt to emote with the audience of the Brachiosaurus in the gas cloud being killed. And again, we both just were like, well, a pyroclastic eruption is the end point of the eruption. After that point, there is not more eruption. It's the end of the volcano at that point.
Yeah, it is the complete release of all built-up pressure left in that volcano. So it doesn't make sense for it to have another huge eruption right after to cover the other part of the island that it missed on the first go-around. It feels like they should have just cut the gyrosphere bit and Stampede and just had this moment with them seeing all the dinosaurs being loaded up and then narrowly making it onto the ship, which even that is fairly silly the way they do it. But again, it's not so ridiculous that I can't roll with it. It's just the combination of the two. It felt like they just wanted a really long action sequence here in the middle portion of the movie. And I still am surprised that this is the halfway point in the movie. Again, seeing the trailer, I was sure that this would be the climactic conclusion of the movie, them getting the dinosaurs off the island, or not, as the volcano erupts.
And then we return to Eli Mills, who is showing around his prospective auction guy, and who takes him down from the big mansion on the top to the super secret labs in the basement, Which is again why I call this movie Resident Evil but with dinosaurs, because basically for the rest of the film, we're in a mansion and secret laboratories, and we are revealed here the Indominus Raptor. And there is... we both took offense to the excuse this movie comes up with for the creation of another military hybrid. Basically, Eli Mills claims that humans have used animals in warfare before, and he uses a few examples: horses, elephants, rats in Stalingrad. So we're going to create a miniature version of the Rex, the Indoraptor, and we're going to sell it. And I thought it would just be fun to go through the excuses the movie makes for this military hybrid and explain why it makes no sense. So, horses and elephants were used in warfare, yes, but they were soon replaced by tanks and armored vehicles when we invented the internal combustion engine, because something layered in quite thick armor plating is generally better than a horse.
Your tank can't catch a cold and die, or break an ankle and die, or potentially catch a disease that it spreads to you and your comrades. It's a bit of machinery. It is more efficient.
In fact, there's an interesting statistic that most of the food that the British sent over during World War I to its armies was the food for the horses. Not the men, the horses.
To be fair, that is now transitioned into a majority of money in the military going towards fuel to run the machines. So, I mean, again, to be fair, it's just a different thing that we feed now, but it still comes with a lot less risk involved towards us.
Then the other example he gives, diseased rats in Stalingrad. I went up and looked up the historical information on this because I had never heard about it. So yes, diseased rats were used in Stalingrad in one example, but it was soon stopped when the Russians discovered that the diseased rats were also infecting their own people with the disease, as well as the Germans they were trying to kill with them, so they decided to not do that anymore. And in fact, this is not the only example of the Russians inventing an animal-based weapon that goes badly. They once trained dogs to carry explosives up to German tanks and then blow them up, but because they trained them with Russian-designed tanks, the tank hunting dogs turned around and blew up the Russians' own tanks. So again, that was not used either. And I kind of think there is a precedent here for inventing a super aggressive hunter-killer dinosaur that you're going to trust not to kill your own people ever?
It doesn't seem like the most cost-effective, efficient, or safe way to handle any of this. Oh my god. Sorry, there's like 3 jets flying over my house.
So yeah, the examples used by the movie in itself to justify the existence of a military dinosaur hybrid again don't hold up to any sort of scrutiny whatsoever if you have anything more than basic knowledge. And it kind of annoys me in a way because it's kind of, I think it's kind of treating the audience as stupid. You know, they're saying, oh well yeah, a military dinosaur makes so much sense. I mean, look at horses. But we don't use horses now, do we? Stop trying to stop trying to treat the audience like fools.
Right. I mean, I feel like they're treating it as if they're fantasy monsters. Like, you know, in the Avatar movies, they have these giant dinosaur-like creatures that they ride around on and use for their own warfare. And in The Lord of the Rings, they had the Oliphants, and they were giant animals that, you know, were used for destruction. But again, they forget this isn't supposed to be fantasy monsters. Like, these are supposed to be actual animals, which they try to enforce with these real-life examples of using animals in warfare. So again, it's just this circular argument that will always lead you to the same conclusion of, this doesn't make any sense, man. I can't think of any sane arms dealer today who would be like, oh, the freaky dinosaur? Yeah, that's for sure gonna be top of the list on my arsenal. What circumstance would that be a great tool? I don't understand. Like, there's an armed fortress. Why would this hybrid dinosaur be better at getting into and killing the targets of this armed fortress than like a drone strike would be? It doesn't make any sense.
I think it's a good example of the Talking Directive from Star Wars in Jurassic Park. If people don't know, the Talking Directive is what results in the Death Star, and it's the idea that you can you don't need a huge space fleet force to rule the galaxy. Just build a weapon of fear, aka the Death Star, and it will force everyone to follow you. But of course it fails miserably, because actually a weapon of fear like the Death Star is, it's only feared once. And it was actually the same with the original tanks as well, that when the British first used tanks, the Germans were terrified of them initially, and then a few days later, it was fine. They were already coming up with ideas to knock them out. It only works once. And instead of building a massive Death Star, it's probably better to invest the resources into expanding your fleet of ships and TIE fighters and everything else. A predatory dinosaur coming at you is only going to be scary the first time, and then after that you're going to come up with ways of killing it.
Also, if there is an island of dinosaurs from the original trilogy of movies that are living out their days nearby, have none of these black market people thought to go collect any of them or sell any of them? And they make a big deal as if this is the first time they've ever gotten the opportunity to do something like this. But that seems a bit strange to me, considering, again, in canon in this world, there is another island that has had dinosaurs just hanging out on it for a good long while. They could still be there. I don't know. They don't address it in the movie, but...
Well, no, it's assumed that when Masrani went to Sauna and took the dinosaurs from there to open Jurassic World, it is assumed he got them all, but I honestly...
No, he took all of them.
I don't honestly think that's even possible. I don't think it's possible he could have had all of them.
Where's the Spinosaur then? Do they kill the Spinosaur in the
No.
third one? Then where's the Spinosaur? You can't say he took them all if I don't see them.
The fan theory, and it's a fan theory that Jurassic World Evolution 2 plays with, is that the Spinosaurus skeleton we see in the park in the first movie is the actual Spinosaurus from Isla Sorna. That they either killed or they found dead and turned its skeleton into a display.
A little morbid.
It is. It also doesn't make sense that you wouldn't just grab the DNA from that skeleton and make Spinosaurus again for Jurassic World, which they don't do. And then we kind of get a proper introduction to what I think is the worst character.
She's not that bad.
Of many worst characters that this franchise has come up with. This being the clone child. It's not exposed that she is a clone to begin with. She's claimed to be the granddaughter of our discount John Hammond. She discovers our bad guys talking about the Indoraptor, almost gets caught by it, and then goes off to tell her grandfather what's going on. And we have the cliche of...
You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a kid.
Yeah, and you especially don't like this. You were like, I really don't like this.
I mean, it's played to death in film. Like, it's something that's been done in storytelling since, like, early myth of this whole adults don't trust what a child says because they're just some stupid child. And it leads to these conflicts not being resolved when there are easy ways to resolve them. Like, it's why I enjoy some modern shows and movies that forgo this trope, like Stranger Things, where very frequently they do tell the adults. They're like, hey, this is going on right now. This is insane. And the adult, rather than immediately just saying, oh, that's crazy, I don't believe you, they actually investigate it and then become a part of the story as well. It's much, much more interesting than the cliche, you're a kid, I don't believe you, and then said adult suffering severe consequences that could have easily been avoided.
And then we return to the boat and we have this section of the boat drama where Blue is bleeding out, and to save her, Vet Woman says that we need to go and get blood to transfuse Blue with. And so she states that the only possible donor for the blood is T-Rex. And they have, Claire Deering and Owen Grady have to go to the T-Rex, into their cage, and get some blood from the T-Rex. And it's just the biggest load of nonsense.
I mean, again, I don't know the science behind dinosaurs nearly as well as many Jurassic fans, but even I, in that sequence, was severely questioning it. I'm like, is that true? That a T-Rex is the closest blood donor that could possibly work? Again, just based off of looks, no science knowledge whatsoever, they do not look compatible with one another. They look about as different from each other as, you know, I do from like an orangutan, and I know I can't get blood from an orangutan and be okay.
Yeah, Velociraptors and Tyrannosaurs, they're not the same branch of the theropod dinosaur family. All carnivorous dinosaurs are theropods, that particular branch of the dinosaur family tree. But that branch then splits off into many different directions. And you have Tyrannosaurids, and you have Abeliasauridae, which is where things like Carnotaurus sits. And then you have the raptors, the Dromaeosauridae. So they're not related. In fact, they're probably further apart than we are to, say, chimpanzees or other great apes. They're probably quite further apart, since the raptor side of the tree is the one that's more closely related to birds than the Tyrannosaurid part of the tree. So they're not related enough. And, you know, in preparation for this, I then went and examined, can different animals transfuse different breeds of dogs, for example, can they transfuse blood? The simple answer is no. It depends on the blood type, and in fact they make a statement to say that it is harder to transfuse blood between different breeds of dog than it is to transfuse blood between humans, because there are many, many more blood types in, say, dogs compared to humans. So God knows how the blood types of dinosaurs would work. So the whole blood transfusion thing is, again, it's another nitpick, but it's amongst a film full of nitpicks.
I mean, I would argue it's not much of a nitpick, because again, as someone without the scientific knowledge to support it, it was hard for me to believe that could be true. I feel like an easy solution to this is you could have just had another raptor be there. You could have had not every single raptor but Blue die in the previous movie. Or just not have the focus on Blue at all, because to be honest, in this movie, it's sort of like the two other characters that feel pointless. By the end of it, I don't really understand why. Like, they do make a point in the movie, which is coming up, where they explain, you know, why they want Blue and why she's important to this whole thing. But considering what happens, I'm like, I feel like there are many other things we could have focused on, which again would have been much more interesting. But again, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yes, and then the ship reaches the mainland and all the animals are being offloaded into the secret laboratory under the island, and Claire and Owen are discovered and locked up with them. The businessmen show up to buy dinosaurs, and our evil guy, somehow our discount John Hammond, discovers what's going on, and tells the business, our evil guy Eli Mills, to phone the police and turn himself in, because he was so going to do that, and so he kills him. Straight up just murders him. So I think the next thing we can discuss is the auction. Basically what happens is...
Well, before the auction is the introduction of Wu, isn't it?
Yes, Wu is back and complaining at Eli Mills that they need Blue alive and in a good condition because the Indoraptor requires a mother in order to properly bond.
The new Indoraptor that they make, because this one sucks.
The new one, because the one they've got now is a prototype. Eli is very dismissive of it all. He's the typical stupid businessman. He's just interested in money. He's not really, he doesn't listen to anybody in this film. So yeah, we have the reintroduction of Wu for a few moments and then that's it. Discount John Hammond is killed. Clone Child is trapped in a bedroom and has to escape. And we have the auction. So a bunch of big names show up to start buying dinosaurs. Meanwhile, Owen and Claire are stuck in the underground lab having a discussion. They kind of have a semi-interesting discussion about... it's not really about themselves, is it? It's about the work they did at the park and everything. And Owen Grady manages to entice a pachycephalosaurid, being Stiggy Moloch, to basically smash down and let them escape. Meanwhile, the auction is going off on upstairs, and we both thought that the price that some of these dinosaurs were going for was way too low for what they are.
I mean, considering they're live dinosaurs. I mean, we've all seen inflation nowadays. You're telling me these dinosaurs would only be going for like $2 million a piece? I don't really believe that.
I mean, I think the Ankylosaurus goes for 10 million.
I mean, again, a dinosaur, like, you'd be lucky to not be in the billion price range.
For a live one. I mean, the most expensive fossil in the world is a T-Rex skeleton called Stan. And that, just a skeleton, sold for $31.8 million at auction.
Again, yes, this is for a skeleton of a dinosaur. So I'm thinking the live one is going to be considerably more. And
interestingly enough, it's a replica. It's not even the real fucking thing.
Yeah, especially I'm telling you, a live dinosaur not selling for less than $1 billion is kind of weird to me. I don't see it happening. I 100% see these selling for like $120 billion or something. And yes, that is a ridiculous price point, but again, there's people in this world who can't afford it and would probably buy a dinosaur if they were given the opportunity. To use for warfare, I don't personally think so, but...
And then we have our first proper look at the Indoraptor in its cage. And you said you thought the
boring.
You thought the design was boring. We'll discuss that more in the dinosaur bit.
To me, it's just boring.
But yeah, the crowd go wild when the way the Indoraptor works is revealed. I think we can discuss it here because it's basically the plot point for the Indoraptor.
Yeah,
existence.
I mean, I just didn't understand. Everyone in the room, the moment it's brought in, they're all gasping and freaking out and like scooting away in their chairs. And this dinosaur does not, in my opinion, look that much more threatening or alien than any of the other ones that were previously shown. Like, it's clear, you know, given the kind of personality they've given the dinosaur, like, oh, it's a mean one. He's a very mean, aggressive dinosaur. He's scary, but...
He's a mean one, Mr. Green.
But I don't know, everyone freaking out the way they do. I'm like, it doesn't look that scary. I feel like the Spinosaurus looked more alien and freaky looking than the Indoraptor. And then yes, it does the laser trick, which they double down on in the following movie.
Yes, so the whole idea of this military weapon is that you point a gun at the thing you want to kill, you aim a laser at the thing you want to kill, and then you press a button on the side of the gun that delivers an audio signal to the Indominus Raptor to kill the thing that you're already pointing a gun at.
I mean, I take more offense to the laser sound situation. Like, how did they do this exactly? They've trained their hybrid monster to only hunt down the thing that they're pointing a laser at once they've made this little sonic noise. It's so ridiculous to me. It just doesn't make any sense.
And I hate it because it doesn't make sense as a weapon. Because if you're pointing a gun at a thing you want to kill, then you don't need a dinosaur to do it. You can just fire the gun.
Also, I would believe it more if they treated it like how you like mess with a cat or something. Like, yeah, point a laser at something and it lunges for it. I would believe that a bit more. I'm like, there's a lot of animals that really do that. You can do that with a pet lizard and it will try to attack it like it's a little bug or something. So I would believe that more than the whole point your laser at it and then press the little sonic noise and then it goes crazy and it has to kill that one thing. Like, it's just stupid. I think it's very silly.
Death through clumsy bludgeoning as it attempts to catch the spot.
Yeah, exactly. If you're gonna make these movies silly, do it in the right way.
Claire and Owen discover what's going on. They discover Wu is here, and they choose to break up the auction by releasing the Stiggy Moloch into the crowd, where again it's played for kind of comic effects. We have lots of people being thrown into the air.
Some of these people had to have died from the impact of a Stiggy Moloch. Like, would they? I mean, it's not a massive creature, but it seems to have a pretty solid forehead.
Yeah, we know from Prehistoric Planet is a 10-inch thick skull hitting you at, probably about 20 miles an hour.
Launching you into the air.
I mean, in the Lost World Jurassic Park, we visually see a Pachycephalosaurid smash its head into the open door of a Jeep, which someone is holding onto, and it blasts the person through the car, out the other door, onto the other side of the vehicle. I think if you're hit by it head on, like some of these people are, it's definitely going to cause serious internal injuries, if not result in death.
I mean, these are terrible people who are, buying these poor dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're not saying they don't deserve to die. These Russian...
I mean, are they Russian? Or I feel like it was just people, shady people of the world.
One of them is Russian, but, given what's going on at the moment, I think we can...
All right. I did like the Stiggy Moloch. I thought they did again, not knowing how accurate any of these designs are, I thought the Stiggy Moloch was quite cute. Had a lot of character.
It is the dinosaur that was like the cute dinosaur of the movie. Stiggy gained a following as a result of this film.
I can see it's well earned. He's a cute little guy. And I like that it was a dinosaur that had some personality and character without it being too like Disney pet kind of angle to it all. Like, I feel like the raptors, they go way too hard on the domesticated pet angle. Whereas with the Stiggy Moloch, I'm like, it was still trying to attack, Owen Grady and a bunch of the other people, but it also wasn't trying to eat them or do crazy monster stuff. It was just, freaking out and trying to get outside. And it was quite cute doing it.
And as the whole thing goes to shit, Tooth Guy comes in to steal a tooth from the Indoraptor, which he thinks he's tranquilized in the cage. And again, it's played for laughs as the Indoraptor grins at the audience and then messes around with his tail, because he's not actually...
Grin is very weird.
Not actually sleeping, he's actually very much awake, and he waits for Tooth Guy to be in the best position to kill him. Now, admittedly, of all of the people in this movie, I hate the tooth guy most. I mean, you watch him pull a tooth out of a steak.
Yeah.
The bastard.
They do at least do a good job making the audience hate him just for the fact that he is so cruel.
I suppose it's that, though, which is why I don't really like him as a character in this, because he's just a cruel character. Dennis Nedry was greedy but smart. Peter Ludlow was greedy, not smart, but he was just a naive businessman. And Hodgkins in the first Jurassic World had grandiose ideas to, militarize the dinosaurs and everything. He was, again, just very naive. This guy, he's just cruel.
He's just...
And I don't really find that an interesting character trait.
I think it could have been if they explained why. Like, if he had a personal vendetta against these dinosaurs for some reason, or towards the people who made them, or whatever it may be. Like, they could have explored some sort of complex as for the reason why he is so unnecessarily cruel and takes their teeth as trophies. But they don't, and he is just exceedingly evil, just for the sake of it, I suppose. And I will say that the grin, as the endo starts to mess with him, again, I don't know if this is me just being a nitpick on reptiles, but I'm like, they can't do that. Like, the musculature of a reptile's face can't contort its mouth into a grin. It's sort of permanently in a slight grin. Like, that's how the structure of their face works. They are not like mammals where they can kind of screw up their lips and things like that, or at least not to the same degree. So, I don't know, that it's just too silly, and it really took me out of it, because they do it twice. They don't do it once, which I might have been able to say, okay, I can blink and miss it, whatever. They do it twice to really be like, no, we mean it. We're really going for this joke. And it just bugged me. I mean, it was nice to see him get his arm ripped off and, brutally eaten and savaged and all. One of the rare moments in the Jurassic World movies where they do let it get somewhat graphic and kind of horrifying. But I don't really care about the endo enough, and I don't really care about him enough to, fully get into the scene or get any real satisfaction or enjoyment out of the whole thing. I'm just sort of like, oh, well, he's dead and it's loose. As a result of his idiocy, the Indoraptor is now loose in the mansion and is going to be a threat to Owen Grady, Claire Dearing, and Clone Child as they attempt to escape said mansion. At this point, we have the reveal that Maisie, the Clone Child, is a clone of Discount John Hammond's daughter. This is a plot point that will be retconned in the next movie. I honestly don't remember how it's retconned in the next movie. We'll save that for when we, get to the next movie.
Yes. But yes, in this movie, she is supposed to be the human clone of the daughter of Discount Hammond, and this is apparently why John Hammond and Discount John Hammond decided to no longer be friends.
I mean, I will say, in a way, I have seen it said in some other reviews, and I have to admit it's a somewhat valid point, that the natural progression of cloning dinosaurs and, things of old and all that is, where else can you take cloning? And one of those ways is human cloning. So I don't 100% hate this plot point for that reason, but I do feel like it comes out of left field in terms of thematically for this movie. Why? What's the point? Again, there is an obvious reason for it towards the end, but it just feels a little forced, I guess. It's It's not something that was hinted at in the first movie or any of the other Jurassic Park movies. And I don't think Maisie herself is an unlikable character. She's a decently likable, little girl who, surviving the events of the movie with our main characters. But there's also nothing spectacular about the character or the concepts they go with either. They're just like, yeah, she's a clone. How shocking is that? We're going to put a pin in that until the end of the movie when that's going to be important again. It feels like a kind of tacked on thing.
And then we have to have another obligatory action sequence as Screaming Guy and Vet Girl, or Screaming Guy comes to save Vet Girl from Dr. Wu and his evil scientists by releasing Blue in, there's some really terrible CGI here, but we'll go into that later. But they succeed in releasing Blue and saving the day, but it causes a massive explosion that Blue has to leap away from in a very die-hard sort of way.
It's very comical to me to see a raptor jump away from an explosion, action movie style. It was kind of weird. I actually didn't hate it though. I will admit that was one moment where it got so ridiculous and comical. I was sort of into it. I was like, that's so stupid. Give me more of that, I guess.
But this explosion will cause a problem later down the line because it leads to the release of toxic gas in the lab.
Which gas? They say the name of it. Is it cyanide or?
It's something hydroxide. I can't remember. It's a very toxic gas. That's all that's kind of necessary to know. It causes death.
I just wondered why they had a vat of it hanging out in the facility. I'm sure it must be used for something.
I do believe that it is a coolant gas for the embryos that they have in the lab.
Okay.
But a lot of coolant gases are horrifically toxic, so it does make sense. And now we have our obligatory horror moment as the Indoraptor attempts to hunt down Claire, Owen, and Clone Child in the mansion, which is all pitch black and everything else.
Which I just wish they would have played this up more. Again, just like the opening sequence, they start with some tension. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get interested in this. I'm getting invested. I'm getting tense. And then it's just so short-lived. They rush to the action, runaway, crazy, bombastic kind of stuff so quickly that I can't enjoy these tense moments. Again, you think about the Jurassic Park movie and the, famous raptor scene in the kitchen, which lasts a good minute. You are stuck in that situation of silence and them crawling around and trying to get away from them long before they are ever actually seen, and it progresses to the action portion of it. Here, I feel like you get a solid, 60 seconds, 2 minutes of tension before it spots them, and then it's them running from it. It's just too eager to jump to action where it could really benefit from some tension.
And we both commented on the fact that the Indoraptor itself decides to chase down the child that's running away as opposed to the 2 other humans that are currently trapped underneath the logs in the exhibit that they're hiding inside, which is collapsed around them.
Yeah, which, it even sinks its claw into Claire's leg.
A point that's
which I guess it just immediately plucked it out, I guess, and didn't realize that it had an easy meal sitting right there and wanted to go after the meal that was harder to catch. Again, just talking about animal behavior, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Again, when a lion goes and chases down a herd of gazelle, it doesn't grab one and then after it has grabbed and injured it, run off to get like another one, it gets the one that it caught. I feel like that might be a slight nitpick, but it was something I noticed in the scene and made me, get pulled out of it for a second.
And then once the Indoraptor buggers off, Claire and Owen have to have yet another kiss moment.
I mean, they were supposed to be together already, so I didn't care. It's like, all right.
Just again replaying stuff from the first movie that they're trying to retcon.
And we did sort of gloss over the moment where they sort of pseudo-adopt Maisie before this action sequence.
I thought we'd save that for the character.
Okay, alright, we'll get to that for them later then.
And then the rest of the film occurs at a pretty rapid pace. The Indoraptor tries to get Maisie, and then we have this very monster movie gothic-esque scene of the Indoraptor climbing up the outside of this mansion in the dark with the moon and everything and roaring away. It's a very monster movie. The Indoraptor resists the bullets that get fired at it, the whole of 2, because coincidentally the gun jams immediately afterwards.
Or is out of bullets? They don't really say.
Or is out of bullets. And they have to be rescued by Blue, again, who comes to the rescue on the roof. There is a fight between them with absolutely no blood or injury whatsoever. So it's just like watching 2 plastic dinosaurs be rammed together in the hands of an idiot child.
But also, why? Like, why would Blue, having escaped this big explosion, in the basement labs, how did she get upstairs towards the Indorex? How did she know where they are? Why, again, would an animal go towards the sounds of predators and, mayhem when any other animal would just run away? It doesn't make sense that she would come to the rescue
it's
here.
Like the dinosaurs with the volcano bit, It doesn't make sense that they would stop to hunt when there's a fucking volcanic eruption going off behind them.
No. Again, just look at any forest fire of today. Take a look at the animals running away in that forest fire. None of them are trying to kill each other. They are all just trying to outrun the fire.
And basically, the Indoraptor falls through the glass roof of the mansion and impales itself on the horns of the ceratopsian skull underneath, dying, making it less effective as a monster hybrid than even the Indominus Rex was, because the Indoraptor kills the whole of, on screen, one person.
That is true. I mean, it's also kind of strange to me that they only introduce the Indoraptor. I think after the halfway point of the movie, there might have been a moment earlier in the movie where they talk about it or show like a little image, or I think there's a holographic image they show of it at some point earlier in the movie, but it doesn't actually show up to do anything until like the last third, and as a result doesn't really leave much of an impression. It just kind of shows up, causes a bit of craziness, and then gets killed by a regular raptor. Killed by a regular raptor the way a human would kill an enemy, I might add, like throwing it off of a height onto some spikes, which I know they've made a point to be like the raptors are super, super smart, but I just don't buy it. I don't buy an animal doing something like that, or jumping on top of the corpse afterwards and in triumph and striking a pose and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, again, I realize some people enjoy the kind of silliness that they are going for with that stuff, but I don't. It's not what the original movie was like, and call me a stickler for the original, but it really was the best, and is the mold and method I think they should be trying to follow, as opposed to what they've been doing.
And then we get the ending of the film with this moral dilemma of the dinosaurs are all stuck in the underground laboratory being gassed. Claire Deering decides that the dinosaurs should not get out into the wild.
Well, she does decide
and then
she's going to do it. It's Owen who convinces her.
She was going to do it, but then Owen convinces her.
Which is weird considering Blue just saved him. Like, if it wasn't for Blue, just saved your fucking life. It seems a little weird that you would still be against saving them.
And then it is Clone Child who releases them into the wild. And incidentally, therefore, that means everything that happens in the next movie is entirely the fault of Clone Child, and she should be held accountable for that. And the fact that she's allowed not to be held accountable for that really pisses me off, but we'll get to that later.
She's a child.
She releases the dinosaurs with this really cringy line of, I had to do it because they're like
See,
me.
I didn't find the line to be super cringy. I was kind of just waiting for that bit of dialogue when they revealed she's a clone. I'm like, okay, she's a clone. They're clones. Naturally, there's a connection here. So it made sense to me that she would view it that way. You know, if I'm a clone, or if they're clones and aren't worth it for that reason, then what's to stop anyone from just gassing me because I'm also a clone and I'm not really worth it? Like, I totally get the logic and the reason for it.
However, they're not being gassed because they're clones. They're being gassed because some of them are, 20-foot long, massive, dangerous, murderous reptiles.
Right. And this could have been an interesting conversation that they could have had in the movie amongst a couple characters deciding the fate of these dinosaurs, but they don't. They just have the one line of, they're like me. Which I can see why it just comes across as, cringy and annoying. Again, I don't find it to be too insufferable or anything, but it's certainly not it doesn't reach the potential that they could.
The dinosaurs get out into the wild. T-Rex kills Eli, thus ending his part of the movie. And again, we have to have the T-Rex roar because Rexy is... the Jurassic World movies have turned Rexy into a hero. But again, we'll go into that when we look at the dinosaurs. And then the film ends with a news report, or kind of like a news report, but Ian Malcolm in his only other appearance here, summing up that now the whole world is buggered because 6 animals are in the wild.
I mean, how many are actually in that scene? I feel like there
16,
are...
maybe 20.
Yeah, probably just about.
It is a plot point that Dominion never explains. And it's a serious issue for me going forward from this film. Because it's like, this is not a danger. The army would handle this problem in a couple of weeks. Wild animals do exist today. We don't have, we generally get on with our lives kind of okay with a few wild animals. The way Ian Malcolm presents it, it's like, oh, this is really bad. It could lead to the extinction of human life as we know it and everything else. And it's just, but it's not. Yeah, it's a danger, but it's not that bad.
Yeah. Again, in the trailer, I think in the trailer they have his line from the end of the movie where he's like, welcome to Jurassic World. And to me, that, like, the imaginary plot I had constructed in my head over the movie was, multiple biogenetic companies from around the world had decided to try their hand at the whole dinosaur thing. And as a result, there are hundreds of them all over the world who have now gotten loose, and it's this huge catastrophe. Some of them are weird hybrid creatures because some of these scientists were going for some weird shit, and some of them are just normal dinosaurs. That was what I thought they were going for when he said the whole, this is now Jurassic World. But again, it's just 20-ish dinosaurs who escape, and in the end of the movie appear to be, a bit of a nuisance. I don't remember all the ending sequence shots. I remember the mosasaur going to eat the surfer, which, poor guy.
The Rex that breaks down the zoo fence and roars threateningly at a lion.
Poor lion. Rats, yeah.
They're the only two I distinctly remember.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
I mean, there's an after-credit sequence where the pteranodons show up at Las Vegas.
Wait, really?
Nest in the Eiffel Tower.
I don't think I actually stuck around to watch it. I live in Las Vegas. I got to know if they did it right. I've been to the top of that Eiffel Tower replica.
And that's basically the film. So in general, we think... what would we say in general about the plot? I would say it's full of contrivances. It's not a very solid story. It doesn't do enough to build tension. It ruins a lot of its scenes with attempts to be funny. Some of the characters don't feel particularly strong in the plot, and the whole idea of the movie introducing this hybrid that then gets killed off kind of makes the film feel a bit anticlimactic, really. That's what I would sum it up as. What would you say?
I feel like it's a movie that just constantly shoots itself in the foot. It has so many opportunities to genuinely showcase a story that could be quite interesting and really worth my time, I would say. Again, the news anchor poses the question at the start of the movie, do these dinosaurs deserve to live or not? That is a really interesting conversation topic that could have carried the entire movie and is never really talked about, save for like once or twice during the whole 2.5 hour runtime. The volcano sequence, again, they shoot themselves in the foot. What could have been a climactic ending sequence to the movie turned out to just be another action sequence in the middle that was played for comedy rather than any actual high stakes or tension. And when you're talking about characters and emotions and everything, again, they really shoot themselves in the foot because there's no characters that get much of a solid arc in the movie. And there's a few, story beats for these characters that don't land very well because of some of the choices they made, like Claire and Owen's reset on the relationship. So again, I feel like it's a movie that is just brimming with potential and doesn't reach any of it, unfortunately.
Right. Characters, then. Let's talk about our characters. Let's start with the strongest one being Claire Dearing.
I think in this movie she's for sure the strongest character, even though she's not a strong character in this movie either. Again, she doesn't have a character arc, but no one does in this movie. She starts the movie wanting to help the dinosaurs. She ends the movie wanting to help the dinosaurs. Nothing changes. I think the character arc they try to give her is she wants to be with Owen. I'm like, we already did that. That does not count. And even to a degree with Owen, like he starts the movie saying, I don't want to save the dinosaurs, and at the end of the movie he convinces her, I don't want to save them. It's like no one really changes or experiences any kind of growth in the movie.
No, I would say that Claire Dearing's change for this film to an environmentalist or activist for the dinosaurs, it is also pretty much a direct copy of what they do with John Hammond in The Lost World, where they turn him into a activist to protect the dinosaurs that still exist on Isla Sorna. So again, it's kind of copying elements from that movie.
I do like parallels between characters of varied generations, though, and considering this is the, sequel generation of Jurassic, I'm okay with some of the characters, having some parallels with other characters from the original franchise.
She is at least different to how she was in the first movie, which is not something we can say about Owen Grady, who is just basically Chris
He's just a
Pratt.
cool guy who, handles the situation. He's the man's man.
In fact, you even you were kind of surprised when he goes beating up a bunch of people in the auction room scene. You were
Was there ever a moment in the first one where he has hand-to-hand combat? Because when he goes up to them and he fights them very, superhero style, I was like, wait, what? he can do that? I don't remember him being able to do that.
He doesn't do that in the first movie.
It felt like them capitalizing on the fact that he plays Star-Lord a little bit, but,
Who else do we have to discuss?
Like, did Alan Grant ever beat anyone up in any of the Jurassic Park movies?
He punched what was his name from Jurassic Park 3?
Oh, the Weasley little business guy.
The Weasley man whose name I cannot remember. Yeah, he punches him once in anger. That's the only time we see it happen.
Yeah, I don't know. Just Owen Grant is just such a generic action male hero that it's just really boring to me. It was in the first one, and since he's the exact same in this movie, it's also boring here.
Our bad guy of the movie, Eli Mills, we both were pretty dismissive of him here, mostly because of his motivation.
I mean, I don't think he's an awful villain. It's not like he's horribly written or anything. It's just standard, He wants money, so morals and people be damned. He's gonna get his money. Again, not the worst motivation or reasoning to have for your villain of the movie. It's also not the most compelling, which I do think is disappointing considering the actor, because if anyone has seen his role on Black Mirror, the one episode he was on there, he was fantastic. Like, he is a truly great actor that could have done something really interesting for this movie, but plays a pretty standard character. Doesn't really get to act very much.
Let's talk about Maisie then, as the child character for this particular film, because it seems like every Jurassic film needs to have a child in it.
It's just to hit that marketing bit for the audience. You want to have everyone in your movie theater represented in some way so they can go, that's me.
So yeah, apart from the fact that, she's cloned, the only other interesting thing is you mentioned is that she basically becomes the surrogate daughter of Owen and Claire in this film.
Which, again, that, if they had continued where they left off at the first one, clearly, becoming a romantic duo, and they just progressed with that, where rather than their point of contention in this movie being, will they get together again or not, and instead turn that into something more about like commitment to one another, or whether they want to have kids someday, or what career path each of them is going to go down, which then culminates in them meeting this little girl that they essentially adopt and become the parents of. That feels like a natural progression to them being in a relationship and what happened at the end of the first one. But because this movie spends the whole time trying to get them back together again, them getting their surrogate daughter falls very flat to me, because I'm like, I mean, they only 5 minutes ago decided that they would try to do this again, so good luck, kid.
Yes, and as we see in Dominion, it doesn't go entirely without problems. Apart from that, Clone Child is not really there to do much else but that. Who else do we have as characters? Right, Dr. Wu, who's literally here just to shout. The Indoraptor needs a mother, and then that's basically the whole of his point of the film.
I liked him a lot more in Jurassic World, where he was equally campy, but he was more calm and in control of his environment. Seeing him here as more of like a bumbling fool was kind of disappointing. Again, the actor is spectacular in some of his roles, and to see it squandered on him, again, just being a slightly more like idiot version of Dr. Wu for this movie was disappointing to me. Also, his hairstyle was awful. What in the hell?
And then we have Franklin, the screaming dude, and Pedo vet woman, who kind of disappear from the middle of the movie after the whole sequence on Isla Nublar and show up to cause an explosion. And then that's basically it.
Yeah, they don't really serve a huge purpose to the movie.
Oh, and of course we have Discount John Hammond, who
only has like 2 scenes.
Who has 2 scenes, but even, you know, it's very clear what they're trying to do with him. They've even given him a cane with the amber globe on the top.
It's the same one, isn't it? The same cane?
It's supposed to, I think it's supposed to be like a copy of the original or something.
I mean, did something happen to the original in the original movies?
Well, yeah, John Hammond. It was John Hammond's. I kind of assume they both have one. Yeah, he's just basically a Discount John Hammond. I love dinosaurs. I want to protect the dinosaurs. We're gonna save the dinosaurs. I'm slightly ill, a bit like how John Hammond was in The Lost World, you know. I've got an undescribed illness that can maybe kill me before the end of this film, who knows. Is naive to... In actual fact, it's very much like The Lost World, because you have John Hammond, who's dying in bed and wants to protect the dinosaurs, and you have the evil bastard who's replaced him, Peter Ludlow, who wants to exploit the dinosaurs. And then in this film, you have Discount John Hammond, who is ill and wants to save the dinosaurs, and you have Eli Mills, who wants to just exploit them for money. It's pretty much an exact mirroring of the Lost World situation. Which, like you said, you don't mind. I fucking hate it, because to me, it's exactly what Abrams did with the second Star Trek movie, taking so much from The Wrath of Khan. It's like
I mean, that was straight up a remake of Wrath of Khan, though, as opposed to like a sequel to it.
True.
I feel like it's almost more egregious in this case because it's not a remake of The Lost World. It's supposed to be a different movie.
Yeah, and you're just grabbing elements from what is definitely a better film than this. I mean, in a way, it almost feels like the story only has 3 characters: the Indoraptor, Owen, and Claire. Because Ian Malcolm is just there to, you know, do his bits at the start and the end for his paycheck.
I mean, yeah. Again, his lack of involvement in the movie didn't bother me as much because I wasn't a part of the marketing campaign. Like, I saw that original teaser trailer and that was it, and forgot a lot about that trailer by the time I actually started watching the movie. But, you know, for that reason, it didn't bother me that he was only there for a quick moment at the beginning and the end for a cameo. But that's only because I wasn't essentially lied to and told that it was going to be a big part of the movie. One of the reasons I say don't watch trailers, folks. If you have to, watch one and then be done with it. Try to go as blind as you can.
So we move on from the characters to the use and design of the dinosaurs, which I think is important because obviously this is a dinosaur film, so they are a very big part of the film. Let's start with the biggest issue that we took, and that is the presentation again of the raptors as pets. And I think it's even worse than it was presented in the first film, because now we have lots of cute, marketable baby raptor video recorded moments with Chris Pratt of raptors cuddling up to him and trying to console him when he acts sad, and it is not raptor. It's not even Jurassic Park. It feels like something out of a children's TV show.
No, yet to see. It's something I would expect to see in a Marvel movie, any other elevated sense of intelligence compared to regular animals, but they made a point so many times in the Jurassic movies that I'm like, okay, well, this movie is treating these raptors like cute little dogs, which they just wouldn't do that. Was it cute to see, a little baby raptor like nuzzle up to someone who's crying? Yes, but it just wouldn't happen. So it's really, really distracting. It's a hard pill to swallow and just go with. It really detracts.
And in fact, I think there's an interesting parallel here to be drawn with Rexy as well, in that in the original movies, the raptors and the T-Rex are the two biggest threats at any one point on screen, apart from perhaps in JP3 when it was the raptors and the Spinosaurus. But generally, the raptors and the T-Rex, when they come into the moment, your characters are immediately in high threat situation. But for Jurassic World's movies, the raptors and the Rex are presented as heroes. The Rex saves the day in Jurassic World with the help of Blue, direct help of Blue. Blue directly saves the day here, pretty much alone. And then in Dominion,
Rex also saves them in this movie from the Carnotaur.
Yep, from the Carnotaurus. And in the next movie, of course, Rex and Blue... Well, Blue is not in it much, but Rexy saves them again in the third movie. And I don't really like the changing of the dinosaurs from being a threat to being heroes. It just doesn't suit the movies.
Because, you can still do that in a way. Because in the first Jurassic Park movie, even though, T-Rex is a huge threat that they have to contend with a few times during the movie, towards the end of the movie, it does come to the rescue, essentially, when the raptors are coming after them. It is only because T-Rex crashes the party that they are able to make their escape and get the hell out of there. So I'm like, you can still have these dinos show up in a, quote-unquote hero capacity without making them intelligibly make the decision to help their little human friends. Like, that is the biggest problem I take with Blue in the Raptors, is the obvious, this animal has decided to rescue his human friend, or her human friend, which just is ridiculous. They're not dogs. They are not dogs. They don't work like that.
And then the other big animal, obviously, we have is the Indoraptor, who we think is just generically kind of boring in design. Or you said it was.
The black and gold looks kind of neat, I guess.
I kind of think the Indoraptor would have looked better if it was white, like the Indominus Rex was. It's supposed to be made from the Indominus Rex, so I think it would have looked better in white. I would say it's less boring than the Indominus Rex was, because the Indominus Rex is just a generic dinosaur.
I feel like the Indoraptor just looks like a mini Indo-Rex. Like, the facial structure and everything looks pretty similar. They do the same teeth on the outside, the same spines down its neck and back. Even the same kind of pose that it stands in, because its forearms are about the same proportion as the Rex version of it. So I felt like it just looked like a sized down Indo-Rex, and they painted it black. Like, maybe a little more streamlined in its design, just because they wanted to make it look a little more raptor-y, but I felt like they could have, and probably should have, made it look a lot more different. Again, if you're going for this hybrid monster angle, like, go for it. Don't just stick with this Indo little box that you've put yourself in.
Apart from those, we then have a huge mass of additional species that show up maybe once or twice in the movie, beginning this trait of the Jurassic World movies to introduce new dinosaur species, not for the purpose of any importance, but to just throw them on the screen at the audience because look, it's a different type of dinosaur. So we have the Baryonyx, who's in there for one scene. The design of the Baryonyx in this movie is generally, I think it's safe to say that the community thinks it's pretty bad. It doesn't look a thing like the actual animal should. And actually the website design that they had to begin with looked so much better than the one in this movie.
And as a person, again, who doesn't know what Baryonyx is supposed to look like, I thought the design in the movie, it looked neat. Like, it was a pretty decent designed, giant crocodile-looking reptile, but it also didn't stand out to me as incredible. I wasn't like, whoa, that's really gonna stick with me.
Yep. The Mosasaurus, which is it's even more oversized in this movie than it was in the last film. Who's just
it
here
did
to
seem
do
very big.
Jumping out bit. The Carnotaurus, which is here just again to threaten them on Isla Nubla. The Carnotaurus is actually pretty good. It's pretty accurate in its design, but again, it's just here to show up and then be done with.
Do love seeing those little arms, though.
the prehistoric planet scene, yes.
While we're on that topic for just a brief moment, I really wish that these Jurassic World movies would play into those aspects. We talked about it a little bit after we watched it, but if they want to have comedy and lighthearted moments, I'm like, do some of those with the dinosaurs. Like, animals in nature, including, we believe dinosaurs as well, they do funny shit sometimes that just are, it's kind of comical. Like, they're asserting certain, like, mating rituals that are very funny from an outside perspective, or even certain, like, feeding habits or social encounters they'll have with each other. I'm like, play up on some of that. Like, if they had a scene like, the Carnotaurus doing its little mating dance in Prehistoric Planet, have something along those lines in one of these movies, I think it would do a world of good.
I agree. Dinosaur species and having lots of dinosaur species in a movie does not make for a good Jurassic movie. I think that's my general thoughts about the dinosaurs and the use of them, especially in the Jurassic World films, and it gets much worse in Dominion. In the original Jurassic Park, the dinosaurs are barely on screen. I think it's something like 7 minutes of the runtime, the dinosaurs on screen, something along those lines. They're barely on screen. They're used very sparingly. But when they are used for a really, a good purpose. The Jurassic World movies, the dinosaurs are always on screen, it seems like, but most of the time they're just there to be on screen, and then that's it. They don't really serve a purpose beyond that in the rest of the film. Like,
I feel like the Stygimoloch in this was one of the best utilized dinosaurs in the movie, because even though it's kind of silly that it's able to bash its way through the wall, I'm like, that's a pretty poor dinosaur cell if it's just made out of, like, bricks. But I appreciate that moment because it introduces general audiences, to a lesser known dinosaur that most people probably haven't seen. And it teaches you at least a little bit about it. You're like, all right, this dude's got a thick ass skull and acts kind of like a ram does. It, bows up and tries to charge at things, which is at least somewhat scientifically backed. And I feel like that is one of the dinosaurs in the movie where it's like, okay, you actually had a sort of purpose for bringing this one in here, and I learned a tiny little bit about it, which is kind of neat. They just don't do that with any of the other ones at any point in the movie, which is something they do in Jurassic Park. They constantly would give you a little factoids about, this is kind of how they operate, and this is why we're fucked right now.
Yeah, in fact, the whole beginning of Jurassic Park itself is Alan Grant explaining why velociraptors are so dangerous. and it foreshadows the problem that he's later going to encounter in the park. And of course, there is a lot more danger as well from the dinosaurs in those original films. In the first film, Ray Arnold is killed, Robert Muldoon is killed, the lawyer is killed, Ian Malcolm is seriously injured, Ellie is almost killed, Tim gets electrically shocked and almost dies.
I was like, who's the one who's limping? Is it him or the sister?
He's limping.
Oh no, that's I'm thinking of Ellie.
Oh, Ellie also gets a limp. I mean, the two kids are almost killed in the car.
Yeah, poor Tim.
Poor Tim. He gets almost killed by the T-Rex breaking into the car, then gets almost killed by the car falling into the tree, then gets almost killed by the car falling out of the tree and crashing him, and then gets electrocuted.
Nearly.
And actually dies and has to be resuscitated, and then almost gets killed by the raptors in the kitchen.
Yeah, he did get it pretty rough in that movie. Poor kid.
He was the Harry Kim of the Jurassic Park.
It really was.
If the writers needed something terrible to happen, it went to him.
If anyone doesn't understand the Harry Kim example, an equivalent would be like Neville Longbottom.
Oh, definitely Neville Longbottom.
Why is it always
me?
I will say, I think the CGI on the dinosaurs for most of the movie is pretty good.
More or less.
Like, I think the Carnotaur looked very good. T-Rex always looked good on screen. There were a few raptor moments that looked pretty bad.
The baby raptors especially, I thought looked quite bad. And that one scene in the lab where Blue escapes from the cage and then it's really close to the face and the head is not the right shape and it just looks very... not bad, but it's
just uncanny. You can tell it's very fake.
Yeah, the uncanny valley thing that you were discussing actually when we were watching.
It just hits that certain part of your brain where you're like, that's not right. That makes me feel weird. That's not real. That's not right.
So yeah, that's the dinosaur bit rounded up. So moving on to sort of your area of expertise now. So CGI, music, sound, editing, that sort of stuff.
Production.
We've already discussed how opening the film with a news report is kind of lazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's more of a writing thing than it is a production angle. I will say, I think production-wise, the movie is pretty good. It's got a huge budget, so naturally you'd expect it to at least be pretty good. I did find some of the music choices in the movie to be a bit odd. There were just a few scenes that it just felt out of place. Like, this is supposed to be a tense, scary moment, but it's playing really, like, epic, triumphant kind of music like you would hear in a really epic action scene, and it just did that a few times throughout the movie, and it would kind of throw me.
Yeah, talking about the music, I actually think this film has a very forgettable soundtrack. Like, even though I don't like Jurassic World as a film that much, I think some of the music in Jurassic World is actually really good. The InGen sort of march theme, that militaristic march theme they have, I really like that theme. And in Dominion there is some good music, I think mostly around the Malta chase and that. But this film, none of the music stuck with me at all. It's just very forgettable, kind of generic sounding stuff. In fact, I don't even think at any point in this movie we have the actual traditional Jurassic Park scores, which are the music that plays on the way to the island, that and
yeah, no, I don't think they do.
You don't get that, but that was in, that music was in the first Jurassic World. It's been in all of the other three films. And the music that slow melody music that plays when they first see the Brachiosaurus in the first film, which has also been in all of the other movies, is not in this one, I don't think either. Not even when the Brachiosaurus shows up on screen. With the perfect moment to use it.
To me, the perfect moment to use that is when they have its death scene. It's dying. If you had like a little music cue in this solemn lament that harkens back to that first meeting, like that would again, sell that moment a bit more. I did think the sets were pretty good. Again, high budget, so they clearly had the money to make what they needed to make. I did find the sets to be a bit uninspired, though. There's nothing bad about them. It's just there's nothing truly unique about them. Like, the underground lab is a very standard, white, sleek, lots of glass. The cells are standard harsh lines, concrete, and then a lot of the stuff on the island is just either on location shooting or a pretty well dressed backlot. So again, good sets, just nothing unique or incredible about them.
Am I the only one that thought the external shots of the mansion looked very fake? I mean, it's obviously a fake mansion, but it really stood out as fake because it just looks a bit.
There was a couple moments where it did stand out to me,
especially the overhead shot of, because it just feels like it's plonked in the middle of a forest. There's nothing else sort of around it. There's no driveway. There's no perimeter wall. There's no garden. It's just literally a building plonked in the middle of a forest clearing. Like it's been dropped there by fucking someone playing City Skylines. It just looked really weird.
You do bring up a good point.
It's no Downton Abbey.
It's certainly not.
I thought some of the sound design around the volcano was very good. You commented on the sort of the time difference between when we see the explosion and the sound reaching us and stuff. There was some very good use of sound with the volcano.
I liked some of even just the sound work of like the whizzing like lava bombs like soaring past them or burning into the pod that they're stuck in. And it's like, again, there was some good sound work for sure. And the dinosaurs, at least to me, sounded good. Like they all had fairly either unique, sounds that they made, or at least ones that suited the dinosaurs that I saw. But again, I'm like, the Indo, it's supposed to be this hybrid monster. It sounds just like a regular dinosaur. You could make it sound a little more monstrous, or like, I don't particularly like the monster movie angle that some of the Jurassic World movies have gone with. But if you're gonna do it, again, do it. Like, really go with it. Give me a hybrid monster, not just a fairly normal dinosaur.
I mean, at least the Indoraptor had the sort of unique property of being able to talk to the raptors, and it used a different voice, for want of a better term, to do that with.
Which is still kind of stupid, but it did something. I thought the acting was good in the movie as well. Like, character work aside, the actual actors did a good job with the material that they were given. Like, the child actor wasn't insufferably bad or anything. She was, pulling her own weight. Bryce Dallas Howard, for whatever complaints people might have with her directing or like political stances and whatnot, she's a very good actor. Chris Pratt is just Chris Pratt. He only knows how to play action movie man, but I mean, he's, serviceable.
That's the... I
just don't like Chris Pratt that much, alright? He's not a great actor or a great person.
I love
so
that way of explaining what Chris Pratt's acting is like. It's serviceable.
I mean, it's true. Even in Parks and Rec, with an entirely comedic role, which I think is still his best role, he really should stick to solely comedy, I personally think. Even then, he wasn't the greatest or funniest character on that show. Like, Chris Pratt is just pretty meh to me. I don't know. I don't watch a Guardians of the Galaxy movie because Chris Pratt's in it. I watch it, I don't know, for someone like Nebula, Karen Gillan or Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon, not Chris Pratt.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think most of the acting in the film is pretty serviceable. I think the sets are nicely designed, like you said. I do really like the whole sort of Resident Evil angle that they go with the mansion and the secret lab. I just kind of wish that perhaps they had lent more into that with the hybrids.
Exactly. Make it creepy, scary. Go for the movie monster angle. You have the perfect set and circumstance to make it happen. And I also remember in the trailer the moment of, it reaching its claw for Maisie in the bed. So I thought, again, that kind of was the angle that they were going to go for in the movie. Once we got to the mansion, I'm like, oh, okay, here's where like the tension and the horror starts.
And it's a bit like Dominion in that regards, where we have one really good tense scene, and that's it. Here is your one moment of what the movie could have been like. Enjoy it.
That's all you get.
Because in a minute, we're about to throw another 70 different types of dinosaur at you, and another action scene, and another bit of Chris Pratt beating somebody up while a dinosaur explodes behind him, and then he's going to do the hand thing to something else, and that dinosaur is going to become his best friend in the world.
I mean, at the rate they were doing the hand thing, I thought he was going to start doing it to humans, and like, as a form of hypnosis. Like, he'd put his hand up to like the human villain, and they'd be like, oh, they have to follow his commands.
Maybe he is just another one of those Jedi that avoided Order 66, and he's actually using the Force.
He's actually Star-Lord using some little techno device on Earth after returning. He just wants to be cool, so he's like, oh, mind control the dinosaurs.
That might be more fucking plausible than what actually happens in these movies, I swear. We now move on to the bit which I'm going to enjoy. The anything unforgivable bit. Things in this movie that we just cannot let go.
I didn't have too many completely unforgivable moments, but I am a fairly forgiving person when it comes to cinema sins. That being said, they're here.
The fact that this movie forgets that Jurassic Park 2 or Jurassic Park 3 has happened and existed really bugs me. Because it feels like they think that their franchise only has Jurassic Park in, and then it's Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom. And they just don't want to comment on anything from the other two movies that are there because maybe they think they're less popular. And they probably are less popular, but you can't just ignore that they happened.
True. I mean... sorry. Even bad movies I can hold some respect for when they follow through with the, concepts and things that happened in them. For all the faults that, Marvel has, there are plenty of bad movies in that franchise that they still will revisit and, or at the very least mention again, because they're like, yeah, that did happen. We didn't forget. The prequel trilogy for Star Wars, even though I don't really like those movies that much, they had an idea and a vision, and they went for it. They really stuck to it, and they didn't just forget the original movies or anything like that. Like, you have to take the whole into account if you're going to take on a franchise like this. And if you don't want to take the whole into account, then don't use that IP. Do a dinosaur movie called something else. For me, an unforgivable, I think the first one I wrote down when we were watching was the you can't outrun a pyroclastic flow.
I also
like
had
that scene, to me, it was just too unbelievable. I'm like, no, dude, the whole rest of this movie shouldn't happen because Owen is dead. Like, I can't just overlook that one. That is a glaring mistake that is, as I wrote it down here, an unforgivable curse.
The fact that the movie never really returns to the question it gives us at the beginning about whether they deserve to live or not, the fact that is in itself a very complicated question with a lot of real world sort of parallels about the rights of animals and humanity's role on the environment. It's a very big...
Also, potentially when we get to cloning, because chances are that could be something that is in our future as human beings.
It's a very big question, and I feel there's a lot that you could have explored with that movie and that question. And they just didn't bother because they wanted to just perform their bait and switch, which was the other thing I had down. They made such a big fuss of Ian Malcolm coming back, and they used him in all of the trailers, and they hyped him up, and he's in the movie for barely any of it. And that really pissed me off as well, because I felt that that was some misleading marketing and overhyping for sure.
For me, an unforgivable was the T-Rex blood saving the raptor. It, again, is just too stupid, in my opinion. I realize there are some people who are going to say, well, that's your opinion on it. I found it to be, fine in my fun dinosaur movie. To me, it just was a full stop. This does not compute, man. I'm not jiving with this at all. And it really pulled me out of the scene for like a solid 10 minutes until it was over pretty much and we could move on with the movie. And the Indo grinning twice for me was it's just too stupid. It pulls me out of it. Anything that really de-immersifies me from the movie I'm watching is typically going to go on my unforgivable list.
And in fact, that T-Rex scene itself, again, suffered from an attempt to make it funny, because the T-Rex crushes Chris Pratt against the wall and he comments, oh, it really stinks and blah blah blah. So again, another moment which could have been very tense, ruined by an attempt to be funny.
It was cute though. I will admit that sleeping T-Rex, I was like, aw, you are very cute. I think the only other truly unforgivable moment I had on it was Blue impaling the Indo on two spikes perfectly. It again was just it was like the ending of an action movie between two human characters. And it felt really weird and out of place. And gave me a superhero landing for a dinosaur.
As a result of that particular scene, we now know that skull is also fake, because a real fossil skull of a dinosaur, you don't drop another, probably a good 300 to 500 kilogram dinosaur on it from a height, and it survive in one piece. And in fact, a little known thing that people don't realize about Triceratops horns is that the actual bit that is on the fossil is not the horn. It is the bit that would be in the center of the horn, and there would be a sheath of keratin or something similar around that, which would be the sharp bit. The actual bit we still have on the skeletons, they're rounded, they're blunt.
And brittle.
So even the idea that it could go through, even if it wasn't a fossil, even the idea it would go through, I just don't think possible.
And again, I take more offense to it from this dinosaur has discovered the best way to deal with the threat is to push the other dinosaur from a height onto these sharp objects in order to kill it, and then has to do a superhero landing on the dinosaur to do a triumphant roar before running away. Or well, there's also a moment after that where, she says goodbye to Chris Pratt and even turns around as she runs off, like, I'll see you again. Like, I don't know, they do way too much humanizing and anthropomorphizing the raptors in particular, or Blue in particular.
So we then, we pretty much shared our unforgivable. We then struggled to come up with any positives for this movie at all. And the only positive I could come up with is that this movie does solve an inherent problem the franchise has had since day one, which is if you want to make more movies, you had to come up with an excuse for people to go back to the dinosaur-infested island. In JP3, the aircraft crashes on the island, and in JP2, they go to the island to prevent the dinosaurs being taken off it, essentially. And that was always a problem the franchise maintained. At least this movie, the dinosaurs are now not on the islands, they are in the wild. That is it was done badly, and it's still done badly in Dominion, but it is probably the only positive of the film I could suggest.
I mean, I felt there are brief little sparks of like really good moments in there. Again, the opening scene, for the first like 2.5-3 minutes of it, it had great atmosphere and tension. There was a lack of music, which made everything more tense and uneasy. There is the moment with the Indoraptor and them in the exhibits where, again, it's for a brief moment quite tense and interesting. It's a decent little horror moment where, you know, it can't see them or they can't see it. But then, again, they don't extend the sequence enough to have any kind of impact. It only lasts maybe a minute or two before it spots them, and then it's, you know, action time. And I also thought, as a positive, they did reveal the true villain of the movie only about 30-ish minutes in, which, again, in terms of screenwriting, is a good thing to do. You don't want to hold off on like the conflict or the point of the movie for too long, so they do get to the point quick enough. But other than that, I do struggle to find some truly positive things about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could only come up with one, because my dislike for this movie is only surpassed by my dislike of the movie that came next.
Yeah, I have seen Dominion once, and I don't remember a whole lot from it, but I do remember not enjoying it very much. I feel like I would need to watch it again to determine if I like it less or more than this one.
So to end this lightning review, retrospective review of Fallen Kingdom, we discussed what we would have done instead. So if we were in charge of the movie, what would we have done? And we both came up with two very different ideas. Why don't you give yours first?
Again, I think the movie should have really focused in on, again, that question, do we save these dinosaurs or not? Like, I would have very much appreciated an introspective kind of movie about the characters discussing, you know, is it playing God to save them, or is it, you know, simply a human moral obligation because we brought them here, now we have an obligation to them? There's enough dialogue in that question alone to fill up an entire 2-hour movie. So again, I think it should have focused entirely on that question, that debate through, you know, amongst many of the characters. I don't particularly care one way or another if Ian Malcolm comes back or not, but if that was a thing they really wanted to do, again, just have him be a part of those conversations in either a courtroom scenario or even in an action scenario where you just have more quiet moments to discuss these things. And I personally think the volcanic eruption should have been the climactic end of the movie, where, you know, they have ultimately decided, you know, yes, we are going to save these dinosaurs, or no, we are going to try and prevent them from getting off this island. Whichever way you want to go with it, I don't really mind either way.
You did say that you would want not to be a trilogy, but have 2 films and have the dinosaurs die at the end. But you thought that might be too melancholy.
Yes, I think that could potentially make a very solid story in this one, to ultimately have that discussion throughout the movie. Do we let them live? Do we not? And then at the very end, when this, you know, volcanic eruption is happening, and you can still make it, you know, crazy, bombastic, and them having to try and escape the island and survive and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, they make the decision to let them all die. And that could be the end of the franchise, which, again, I know a lot of people, especially Hollywood, would absolutely not go for, because you have to have a trilogy nowadays. You can't just have 2 movies or 4 movies. It has to be 3 or 6 or 25 of them. It has to be something that just goes on and on and on and on. Whereas I feel like this movie and this plot potentially gave you a really solid exit point for the series. Which, again, I know a lot of people would adamantly oppose off the bat, just for the fact that it would be the end of it, but I think it would have made a pretty solid story. And it would have made that moment with, the very first dinosaur you ever see in Jurassic Park coming to an end, having that be one of the last scenes in the entire franchise. Again, that might hit me a little more emotionally than it actually did halfway through the movie, not even realizing that that's supposed to be the same dinosaur as the very first one.
In fact, that is one of the lines that Claire states in the movie, isn't it? She asks, do you remember the first time you saw a dinosaur? And she talks about how you think it's impossible, but there it is. So yeah, I think it would have made a really good movie to do it the way you suggested. I would have gone for something slightly different, and to have a movie of 2 halves. So you have one half being sort of the ongoing courtroom, and you have some of your characters there, and you make more use of Ian Malcolm, and you do the discussing of the question there. And the other half you focus on the tracking down of and handling of the escaped mosasaur. And you focus on how are we going to find this thing and how are we going to stop this thing. And you can have Owen and Claire and Doctor Wu and whatever involved in that particular aspect of it. And if you really want to have the Indoraptor still in the movie somehow, I'm sure you could write it in somehow. But those would be the two areas that I would focus on for the film. Again, so that we can have that introspective discussion about what we do.
It'd also be unique. It would be the first Jurassic movie to have a predominant court case take place during it. And again, I know court case dramas and everything, for some people it just doesn't really vibe. There's a lot of people who see that as just boring and don't want to be involved in it, but some of the best episodes of TV that I've seen have been court case dramas, so I think it could have made for a quite compelling storyline in this movie. And it wouldn't have just forgotten the mosasaur existed either.
Yes. This giant supersized predator that's just swimming around the ocean, not being dealt with at all.
We have endangered species out there that it's probably preying on. We would probably care about this.
That's what made me laugh about the ending of Dominion, where they showed 2 humpback whales almost living in harmony with a mosasaur that's with them. And I'm like, dude, that thing would be eating and killing those humpback whales. There's not going to be any niceties between them. That's going to tear them the fuck up.
I was going to say, you could have done something like a school of fish have all formed a little symbiosis with the mosasaur. Current species of fauna melding with the dinosaurs. That I would buy. Something like that happens currently. Whales and sharks and huge sea mammals and fish have other fish and symbiotic creatures that kind of help them out. But a whale would be its food source. it would try to eat them.
Definitely. So, I think that's pretty clear. I mean, if we're going to do a TLDR version of it, we would say this is worse than Jurassic World, probably worse than any of the original Jurassic movies, maybe on par with JP3, but I think even that is being too harsh to JP3.
I just don't remember 2 or 3 well enough to affirm if I agree, but I don't remember hating 2 or 3 after watching them. This one, I found a lot to hate.
Do you think if you were making a list of your top 10 worst movies, do you think this would be on it?
No, I don't think it would be top 10 worst I've ever seen, but it's top 50. It's certainly a pretty bad movie that I would not recommend people to watch for any reason other than to critique it and be like, look at these look at these flaws and mistakes. This is what you should not do in your movie. But again, I've seen some horrifically bad movies, and this I would put somewhere at like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. And there are definitely some 1s and 2s out there.
Yeah, the next one, which we will have to.
Yeah, maybe
we will have to do next. But let us know down in the comments what you thought of Fallen Kingdom, whether you agree or disagree with anything we had to say. I want to thank Nerdguy Productions for again helping me with this retrospective review.
Thank you for having me. This was very fun.
And yeah, we're going to have to force ourselves to watch Jurassic World Dominion again to finish.
Again, I remember I did not like it. I remember one key plot point about the movie being so stupid that I don't really look forward to revisiting it.
Maybe we'll have to retrospectively review the original Jurassic Park. So we have like a high one, and then we can go into Dominion.
Yeah, we could do that.
Let us.
I mean, I say at this point, let's just finish up with Jurassic World, and then we can go to the good stuff after.
Perhaps we'll figure out the order for that. But yeah, so let us know down in the comments, folks, what you think. And do remember to give us a like and subscribe if you have not already done so. And there will also be a link to Nerdguy Productions' YouTube, where he also reviews the things he watches, the films, the TV shows, and there's lots of funny, scary gameplay footage on there as well if you like watching people scream.
There is not.
There really is. There really is. Trust me. And I'm still bugging him to play Alien Isolation because I think it's so hilarious. It would be hilarious. But yeah, do go and give him a sub as well to be nice. But yeah, until next time, folks, stay safe, and it's goodbye from me.
Have a great day, everybody.
And we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.